What's up, everyone, and welcome into the Buffalo Sports Collective. It is Monday, March 18th, 2024. As always, I am Leprechaun PK, along with Leprechaun co-host Phil for episode 268. Phil, I know it's the day after St. Patrick's Day, but we're recording on St. Patrick's Day, so happy my day.
Yeah, happy Patrick's Day to you. Our Discord chat is called like Patrick's Room or something, or the Patricks or something like that. I get very I don't know. I'm not part of that room, but yeah, happy Patrick's Day to the Patricks on this show.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I am decked head to toe in head to belly button of because you can't see below the waist, so I might not be wearing pants, but I am wearing pants. But I am all decked out in St. Patrick's Day green. Don't really celebrate it this year because you have a wedding coming up this summer, so your basement is not party central location. And it's cold outside, so we can't do it in the garage either. So there will not be any St. Patrick's Day party, but we're partying in our hearts. So hopefully everybody out there had a happy, safe, and healthy St. Patrick's Day because I know I did. I took a nap. So if you all out there want to share your St. Patrick's Day stories, like mine, I always battle my brother because we're both Irish, and we grab a piece of cardboard and fight to the death each St. Patrick's Day in Phil's garage. And it didn't happen this year, so another year to just bulk up a bit here. But yeah, you can let us know. You can let us know on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. Well, it's still legal in America. Sports Collective, Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X and Blue Sky, Buffalo Sports Co. Don't forget to follow our channel wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out our website at buffalosportscollective.com. Phil's article will be out on Tuesday. I will be back writing Week 17 Power Rankings this coming up Thursday because last week traveling couldn't do it. But yeah, you'll get a full article on Thursday. Check and then look for the time breakdowns in the description of the show. Big show today. Buffalo Bandits back above 500 for the first time in a while. And Phil, the streak is over. It ends at 8. Buffalo stopped the opponents from scoring 13 or more goals. It ends at 8. It's done. They won 14-12 versus Toronto, swept the season series versus them, made them go back to Hamilton crying. Smith had 3. Nanakoke, McKay, Byrne, and Frazier all had 2. Kluch, Dylan Robinson, and Nick Weiss had 1 each. Vince, 47-59 save shots per 58-54 in favor of Toronto. And for those that care, faceoffs 22-9 in favor of Toronto. Phil, I don't know where you just go over the overview quick of the game, and then we can kind of go into the different departments of it. But a really, really solid game, and I thought this was the first full 60-minute game we have seen from the Buffalo Bandits in a very long time.
Yeah, I'll go over some things I saw on the broadcast as far as stats go. There were a few before the game even started. The Toronto Rock are 1-7 in the last 5 years in Buffalo. They have 70 goals for, 92 goals against. As everyone knows, they were eliminated from the playoffs last 2 years by Buffalo. And then just as far as them this year, in the first half, Toronto is plus 10 for goal differential, which is 7th in the league. In the second half, Toronto is plus 29 goal differential, which is number 1 in the league. The next best is Rochester at plus 8. In this game, the Bandits were plus 5 in the second half against Toronto. So there goes their sparkling second half numbers. And we talked about it from last game. The Bandits really took off in the fourth quarter. They did it again in this game against Toronto. And both times, again, this is a huge second half shutdown, fourth quarter, great team. And the Bandits really took it to them in both fourth quarters of both games. This game was wild. I mean, the last 2 games for the Bandits have been just extremely good lacrosse games that you want to go back and watch again simply because it was entertaining, it was close, it was fun, it was just a lot. And at halftime, I was worried. The first quarter, I was worried as Toronto kept pulling away, then the Bandits kept coming back, and then when they did take the 6-5 lead, I was like, all right, I don't think they should be leading right now, but I'll absolutely take it. And then when it was 9-6 after Toronto rattled off 4 in a row, I was like, all right, this is not good to be down against a really good defensive team and a good team in the second half. And then the third quarter, the Bandits were able to get one of those 3 back. And I was like, all right, we're still in it. This is interesting. And then the Bandits just had a monster fourth quarter. Overall, just, again, a really, really good game to watch. Both teams do not like each other, but I thought the Bandits played, like you mentioned, an overall 60-minute good game. Yes, they had some issues that we will talk about kind of on every aspect of the game. They had some times throughout the game where they were struggling a bit, but for the most part, you needed a full 60-minute team effort to beat a team like this, and winning the way they did, holding Toronto under 13, fantastic, scoring more than the 9 that Toronto normally allows is incredible. Not even just the fact that they got all the way up to 14, and Nick Rose allowed 6 of the first 9 shots to go in. Just a wild game from both teams, but a really, really great victory. And hopefully this is one of those victories that the Bandits can look at and just kind of take off from their season from here and really get back on track.
Yeah, I got to learn to stop picking Toronto over Buffalo because it never pans out. I mean, how many times they've won?
Superstition.
It is. I mean, they've won.
Them, please.
Yeah, they won 4 out of 5 last year, I believe it was. They won both of these ones this year. I really got to stop doing it.
Buffalo, just nuts.
Yep. Just in Buffalo, yeah. I mean, overall,
yeah,
they've won.
Just keep beating them everywhere.
6 of 7. It's stupid. They have Nick Rose's number. I don't get it. I really don't understand it. Nick Rose was coming in like 9.2 goals against. He was up in MVP talks, and the 2 games that Buffalo's faced him, he's let in 30 total goals. It doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. But we said on the show on Friday it's not a must-win game for them because they won against the Rush the week before. But if you're able to win, that's a huge, not just a statement win, but a huge win in the standings as well. You look at it, Georgia lost, so they slipped behind you. Halifax did win, so they're keeping a game pace, and they still get that edge over you. But you got Rochester who won. They're back to 500. Panther City lost, so you gain another game on them. Saskatchewan won, so they're right on your tail as well. New York lost, so they dropped back. Philly won. Calgary lost. So it wasn't like the teams behind you rose to the occasions and try to catch up, but there were some teams that were behind you that did win that would have passed you had you lost this game. Like Rochester would have passed you. Georgia would still be ahead of you right now. You'd be tied with Panther City right now. Saskatchewan would be right on your tail. So it wasn't a must-win game for this team, but to get that 7th win, get back over 500, and now your 5 remaining games, every team you face is currently under 500. Not saying you can run the table, but you're leaving that option open where they could finish 12-6 on the year. Again, with these unified standings, I mean, we're showing it on our BSC picks. I mean, I thought I did really well this week, and I find out I did 4-3. It's every team in this league can beat anyone at any given moment. I think Johnny T said it in the press conference. Vancouver, you go to Vancouver, last place team, you'll lose to them. But then you come home and you beat the top team. That's why I absolutely love these unified standings, because it's so difficult to go in week by week and figure out who is going to be ahead and win that game. But let's dive into it. Let's start with the offense first. We'll go over the good and bad with what we saw from the offense. But 14 goals on the Toronto Rock. Unbelievable defense and their goaltending. Again, I thought this was clear and obvious the best team going into Saturday night was the Toronto Rock. I thought they had the edge over every other team in the league. And now with their 3rd loss, and 2 of the 3 came from Buffalo, it's going to be a very interesting playoffs if these 2 teams match up. But what did you see from the offense that really stood out, good or bad? I don't know which way you want to start.
We can start with the bad, I guess. For the most part, I mean, the opening was wild. Like I just mentioned, 6 of their first 9 shots, I believe, went in, which is just unheard of. And then they went on a massive scoring drought for a really long time. And
25 minutes.
Where I got, what was that?
25 minutes from the end of the first until about 5 minutes left, 5.5 minutes left of the third. 25 minutes without a goal.
And that's where I got really worried. And you're just like, okay. And it's not that they were playing bad at that time. They were still getting good looks. I mean, Nick Rose is one of the best in the league, if not this year, the best in the league. Their defense is, like you mentioned, one of the best in the league. So it's not necessarily that the offense was playing bad. I think it was that Nick Rose was making very impressive, timely saves. The offense was getting good looks here and there, but he was just there every single time to shut them down until they really took off. And I think that's one of the bigger things with this team, especially in a game like this. You go 25 minutes without scoring. I don't think they really overthought it. I think they had the same thought. Like, they were getting their opportunities. They just weren't going in, and they continued to stick with their game plan. They continued to again, not overthink it, not completely switch what you were kind of like doing because it wasn't working. They stuck with what they know as an offense, and it ended up coming up massive in the fourth quarters. They really stuck with what they were doing, and it ended up paying off at the end. So, I mean, Smith and Byrne continued to be just incredible. The rest of the team was very good at supporting those two, but I mean, overall, it was just more about sticking to the game plan despite not scoring for 25 minutes, and just really being able to get inside on this defense is another big thing I saw. That a lot of the goals, especially early on, were coming from the mid-range and inside areas. They didn't score a lot of outside goals because that's not what Nick Rose allows. And even inside goals, he doesn't really allow many of them either. But their ability to get inside on such an impressive defense was really impressive, and it was good to see, and a lot of just strong positives from that fourth quarter. And again, just really sticking with what ended up working but wasn't working for such a long time.
Yeah, I'll go over my bad. You already mentioned the 25-minute goal drought. It's not the first time we've seen this out of this offense. I just wish that eventually, and it's hard to critique an offense that's, I'll have to do the numbers, but they are one of the top scoring teams, but they might have edged Halifax in this one. I think, although I think they edged Rochester maybe. I'll have to go back and do the numbers. They're at least in the top three because they went into the top three and then they exceeded what they were averaging. So they might be either two or possibly even tied for first. But so it's hard to knock really what they're doing. It's just in these goal droughts that they've been known to go on this year, I just wish they would change up their offense a little bit rather than just go where a lot of their offense is just manufacturing some plays out there, because you got Byrne, who likes to have the ball on his stick. You got Kluch, who likes to have the ball on his stick. Frazier, Nanico, Smith. All these guys really like to have the ball on their stick, but they're not selfish about it. I just wish that they would go more pick and rolls or quick sticks or something like that when you can't break out of the offense. And I know a lot of people around that really know the sport are just going to go, you can't move away from works and you can't go away from your fastball when it's not working. You got to keep going and eventually it'll break through. I just wish you would throw that in every once in a while on those offensive possessions where you try to change it up, just even one or two offensive possessions, just try to get out of that funk and try to make it so you're not going 25 minutes, a quarter plus without a goal. I just wish they would switch that up a bit. The first 5 to 7 minutes in the third quarter, I thought were really, really sloppy on the offensive end. It seemed like the defensive end, it seemed like the whole game, that first 5 to 7 minutes in the third quarter, both teams were very sloppy. And then the other negative, which there's not a ton of negatives when you're beating Toronto with 14 goals. Emerson Clark, and I know we've talked about this in the past, he's not a bad player. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not critiquing his play. I just don't think he fits with this team. That's what we've been saying on this show, is the signing and the playing of Emerson Clark just doesn't fit with what they need from the lefties. He's not big enough to set those hard picks and free up Kluch and Byrne. I mean, when his biggest play in the 5 games he's made so far was being able to get out of the crease so Dane Smith's goal counted. That's been his biggest note of being on the team, and that's a bad thing. Like, I'm looking back and I'm going, okay, no Brandon Robinson. They might be regretting this Brad McCulley trade because he would come up huge right now. You wouldn't have to start an Emerson Clark up there if you had a Brad McCulley to do the dirty work. So, again, this is one you're trying to nitpick here, and I'm trying to find some negatives because we try to be unbiased in here and try to talk about the whole game as a whole. But the Emerson Clark experiment, to me, just hasn't worked unless he's doing something that my average eyes can't see. I'm just a little bit confused why they keep going to the well 5 times out of 13 games now, when the experiment just doesn't seem to be working. I just haven't noticed him enough out there, whether it's good or bad. I noticed the good picks by some of the other players, like Belter, when we're going to be talking about a bit in a minute. He had a huge pick on that Dylan Robinson goal. I just haven't noticed Emerson Clark on the offensive end enough to warrant giving him any more time when, you could be throwing out a Corey Highfield up top or giving Ian McKay a few more starts. I just think they're missing that Brad McCulley trade that confused everybody.
Yeah, I mean, they get 2 second-round picks?
2 seconds, yes.
Yeah,
and they didn't. I don't believe they used either that they got from Vancouver for either Highfield or Paul Dawson. So you can't honestly say that the trade of McCulley brought in 2 other players, because I don't believe that they moved those 2 seconds.
Yeah, I think right now they would take those 2 seconds and trade them for McCulley.
For McCulley?
Could,
yep.
And
that would probably help.
Back. And that was kind of the problem, and a little bit of the worry we had with trading McCauley was that Brandon Robinson has an injury history, and he has,
Yep.
before he came to Buffalo, he has since he's been in Buffalo, and we absolutely love him when he's out there. This is nothing against Brandon Robinson, but I mean, was it Brandon Bean always says the best availability is being out there, whatever his awesome saying is. That I've gotten told that saying so many times I always forget what it is, but basically you have to be healthy, and Brandon Robinson just often is not. And when he's out there, he's great and means a lot to this offense and what he can do, especially for that left side. But he's often injured, and that's an issue. And right now, like you said, they desperately could use McCauley. And I know we're still nitpicking a team and an offense that scored 14 goals. So I think until we get to special teams, we can probably leave the offense alone because they had an incredible game and a really, really good comeback. I mean, down 9-6 at half, it was not looking good. Even after that third quarter, down 10-8, you're still not looking good because the offense didn't really get too many goals in the third. So it's not like they all of a sudden turned it on, but then the fourth quarter came and they absolutely turned it on. It was really impressive what they were able to do in the fourth and really, I mean, not run away with the game, obviously. It was 12-12 very late, but still, even to continue to fight. I mean, Toronto late in the game got the 2 to go up 12-10, and the offense still continued to fight and come back. Like when they were up 12-10, I was like, okay, there's not a lot of time left. You still need 2 more goals against one of the best goalies and defenses that really haven't allowed you to do much in the second half, and then they stuck with it and got 4 more goals to end it. So overall, really impressive. Like you said, we're getting nitpicky, but we got to find some negatives. They're not perfect, but do you want to move on to the defense?
Well, I have a few more good on the offense. I mean, Dane 3, 4, and 7. He feels just his style of play in this game. It feels like he might be back with his goal scoring touch. I mean, this is what back-to-back games where he's scored multiple goals. So I think he might be back. I think he might have figured it out. That juke step he has, man, it's the best in the league. There's not another player out there that I would put up there with a Dane Smith that has that type of juke step. I know Josh Byrne had it for his game-tying goal. He deked the pants off that one guy and got in front of Nick Rose. But that juke step that Dane Smith is just, it's legendary, and he's unbelievable with that one. So I think he's back. Josh Byrne, going into the second half, he was 1-1. 1 goal, 1 assist through the game. He just turned it on and finished 2-5-7. He's unbelievable. Kluch, the game-tying goal in transition after a big Matt Vince saves, massive game from him, 1-3-4. Frazier, he got his goal-scoring touch back, 2-1-3 after being shut out last week. And then Nanako, just doing the dirty work, getting in front of the net. He doesn't get the credit that he deserves. We all know how unbelievable he is, but his 2 goals were great. 8 of the 11 goals scored in this game in the second half were from Buffalo. The Dane to Kluch, back to Dane for the quick stick to end the first quarter. Perfect play. Now, you did have that 5-minute major that they were on the power play for. They only got 1 goal in that, and they won't get credit for this one, but the second goal came right as the power play ended. It does feel like this offense, when they're clicking, nobody can stop them at all. But when they're off and they have that spurts of almost a whole game or half a game without scoring, that's the one part of this offense that they really have to figure out. But when they're clicking, they are on like the best in the league. I know there's other great offenses. Halifax has got a great offense. Rochester, you can't dismiss the Toronto offenses, all those top offenses. I don't think there's anybody that can match Buffalo's offense. And again, I'm taking off my biased hat. I've watched all these games. There's not another offense that can compete with Buffalo when they're on.
Yeah, and speaking of that, Dane to Kluch to back right before the end of the first, I think a lot of credit needs to go to Johnny that is not given to him with the amount. I think we said it on the either last episode or the one before that the setup plays that he is calling out of timeouts and right before half, right before the end of a first quarter when they have the opportunity.
Play designs?
The designed play. I believe that was off of a timeout or I think it was right off of the power play. So they talked about what they were going to do and just the designed plays he's coming up with. Are they scoring on all of them? No. Are they getting incredible opportunities that they likely should be scoring on most of them? Yes. Like I think it was last game against the Rush where it was barely kept out of the net on that
Yep.
challenged goal, which could have gone either way.
Vancouver's, this one.
Right. Then there was another one, even in this game, that Buchanan had it. I don't know when it was in the game, but they had another design play where it went kind of all around the place, and then Buchanan ended up finding himself wide open right in front of the net.
Second quarter, I believe.
What was that?
I believe it was the second quarter.
And then, again, just right in front of the net, wide open, huge opportunity. Did he bury it? No, but was it an incredible designed play? Yes, and it worked. And it's not just that the plays, are too much for the team or anything. They're getting incredible opportunities on these set plays coming right out of timeouts. And I think that's what you want to see, you personally over there, want to see a little bit more of throughout the offense in
100%.
general, is trying to set up some of these designed plays just throughout the game, even not off a timeout, just kind of having some kind of code name saying, hey, these are the guys out there. We're going to try to run this play. Go see if you can get it. And you just want to see a little bit more designed offense every once in a while, especially when, like you said, the goals aren't flowing for 25 minutes. But I think he deserves a lot more credit for these designed plays that they are scheming up, because they are coming up huge. And I don't know if you want to talk about transition as part of offense or defense, but the transition in this game was also massive. With McKay's shorthanded goal was massive, especially at the time where they had just scored 2 goals and they were on the power play. So getting that was huge. And then Dylan Robinson's transition goal was huge. And I think McKay's his second goal, I think it was the 12th of the game, where he had the opportunity and then missed it and then was able to scoop it up and dunk it because Rose didn't know where it was. I believe that was also in transition. So another just 3 massive transition goals for this team is, I don't know if you want to say offense or defense, but the transition they had, and I think even Belzer had a great opportunity when it was a 2-on-1 with both defenders, and it was a good shot, but Rose made a big save on that one. So the transition was really flowing in this game as well.
Yeah, we can transition into the defense, see what I did there. But yeah, that Belter one that you're talking about where he's coming up the left-hand side when you're running at the goalie.
Yep.
I'm actually putting that one out a little bit on Dylan Robinson because it almost felt like he wanted to pull off. Like, it almost looked like he was going to pull it out, get the offense onto the floor, and it looked like Belter was like, no, give me the ball. I feel like they could have did a give and go better if Dylan Robinson would have handled that transition opportunity a little bit better, because it was 2-on-1 all the way up, and it seemed like he didn't give it to Belter quick enough, where if he would have gotten it over to Belter could have led the charge to the net, tossed it over to Dylan Robinson, and possibly a quick stick there. So I thought that was a lost opportunity by a Dylan Robinson opportunity there. But yeah, Belter had a good shot on net. It's just Rose made a better save. But yeah, the transition game in the first half really carried this offense that Rose was shutting down. The Weiss getting it up to McKay after an illegal pick to get Buffalo's the first goal. That was a massive one, turning point of the game. Weiss was all hustle to get that loose ball in the offensive zone, and a great pass over to Frazier for Bandit's second goal. And then McKay, great loose ball. The one that you're talking about, the getting the ball up to Dylan Robinson in transition. He's running up the field, and Belter's telling him, keep coming, keep coming, keep coming. And he set a great pick to free up Dylan Robinson in front of Nick Rose to cash that one in. McKay's, like you were saying, it's not in transition, but the loose ball pickup and the dunk it was great. And then Priolo's the last second scoop in the final dying seconds to get it up to Weiss for an empty netter. I honestly think this was Weiss's best game. I know Dane Smith got the belt. If you care about those moments, he got the player of the game belt for the Buffalo Bandits. But I really thought this was Nick Weiss's best game. I thought he was the best one on the floor this night. And I really liked his style. He played the aggressive style, but not over the top. And it almost felt like, with the addition, and this is where I will give Buffalo tons of credit, they went out and got a veteran defender like a Paul Dawson. 4 loose balls, 3 block shots, and 2 caused turnovers. That's exactly what you want. That's what I was saying when you brought him in. I think he still has enough juice to add to this team as long as he stays out of the penalty box. Did just that in this game. This is the type of Paul Dawson, the good Paul Dawson, that will lead the back end. I thought he was great on the penalty kill, but I feel like having him out there freed up Nick Weiss to get those extra rests and be a bit more fresh in the fourth quarter, because even in the fresh fourth quarter, he was running around. Priolo was still running around. But I really thought this was Nick Weiss's best game of the season, and he's been unbelievable this year. But 1, 3, and 4 with 2 caused turnovers, I really liked his play on the back end and in transition, because if you see, Weiss to McKay, Weiss all hustle in the offensive zone to get Frazier the second goal. Weiss was there to kind of pick up that loose pieces to keep Buffalo in that first quarter, and I can't talk enough about his play in this game.
Yeah, I'll save some of it for special teams, but one of the things that you just mentioned about him as well, and same with Dawson, is that they both stayed out of the box. Weiss has had a lot of penalty trouble this season, and some of them are warranted, some of them not so much. He's gotten a little bit hot-headed. He's that kind of edgy player for sure. He plays very physical, but in this game he was able to stay out of the penalty box, especially during a game that was being called pretty close for both teams. It was really impressive to see
at the beginning,
stay out of the box, and then, like you mentioned, also be able to be a huge part of transition and just a massive part of this win. And I mean, if we we keep talking about the defense, but real quick, just going through the Bandits lineup here. I mean, Wires, I know he's a rookie and he's been in most of the season, but he's still a rookie. Dawson, Clark, LaRue. Who else we got? Silver was out. Farrell, Belter, even Highfield. I mean, like, all of these players, like, that's what, 5, 6, 7 players that really weren't a staple part of this offense or this team last year at all. Some of them weren't even on the team. So to see what the team has been able to put together, like, this is a patchwork.
Makeshift.
Yeah, this is a makeshift roster right now, and yet you went out and beat one of, if not the best team in the entire league with all of these new faces, including some that are playing in just their first game for Dawson for the team, and Belter's only in game 3 or 4, Highfield game 2 or 3, Clark same thing. So to be able to put this roster together and go out and have the performance they ended up having, especially on defense and offense, just really incredible. And then as far as defense goes, a offensive player I want to mention, Dane Smith, still playing.
I'm glad you brought it up.
Little bit too much defense for my liking, but my goodness, is he playing incredible defense back there. And I get what the Bandits are doing, and I'm slowly accepting it, I guess I'll put, especially with the amount of injuries they've had on the back end. I know they trust him being out there more than a lot of these players, and I get it. And he actually led the team and caused turnovers, which is incredible for a forward. And I know, like you said, his rookie season, he was a defenseman. It's been a long, long time from his rookie season. He's a completely different player now. And for him to lead the entire team and cause turnovers is just mind-blowing as a forward. And the amount of defense-only shifts he was taking was incredible. And I know he's talked about that he's willing to do whatever it is for the team to help them win. And he is clearly helping them on the defensive back end. But there's just times, again, even late in the game, he had to switch it over to somebody else. And I don't love not having your number one offensive player, possibly number 2 this year with Josh Byrne, but still, he's your number one setup man and arguably the number one setup man in the entire league, running off the field when it's late in the game and you crucially need a goal. I don't love that, but I do like how well he's settling into a true full-time player. I mean, he is just playing incredible defense, incredible offense, getting the cause turnovers. I don't know. I don't know what else you could possibly say about how incredible Dane Smith really is for this team.
Well, before I dive into any more comments I have on the defense, let's dive over to our first sponsor read for this show, since we're nearly halfway through it already. Our first sponsor ever and our first sponsor on this episode. Tap That Tap Room. Phil, did I give you enough time to scroll down in the document?
You did. It's a lot of scrolling.
Okay, perfect. It is.
Like you mentioned, our first ever sponsor, Tap That Tap Room at 363 Delaware Street in Tonawanda. They are Buffalo's first women-owned self-pour bar. And for today's episode, we decided to take a menu item and pair it with a drink that they currently have on tap. And I'm going to let PK talk about his choices first.
Yeah, so if anybody's ever seen me around, I am not very good at style. I mean, you can kind of see based on the camera right now, I'm not good at style. So this pairing might not work perfectly, but I don't really care as long as everything tastes good, and everything's going to taste good. The dip trio that they have to offer here, it's 3 different kinds of dip. It's the wing dip, spinach artichoke, and taco dip. All 3 of our famous handmade dips served to you along with tortilla chips, pita bread, carrots, and celery. Unbelievable. And Phil, I'm pairing that, since I'm dressed head to toe, well, head to belly button, in St. Patrick's Day gear. I'm going to toss out another St. Patrick's Day drink while it's still on tap, the 1911 green cider. It looks delicious. I love cider. I am a big cider person. So I'm going to drink any cider put in front of me, even if it's green, but I'm going to pair those 2 together. What's your pairing?
I love it, and I am struggling, if we're being honest. I had my pairing up and I lost their menu and I cannot get it back right now. So, um, do you still have the menu
I'm
available?
gonna pull it up right now for you, Bill. But if you
Okay.
want to give your drink
Yeah,
first,
I'm gonna get my
I'll
drink.
pick a
You
food that
give
you'll
me a
like.
pairing to go with it. So my drink is Punch Bowl Orange Sherbet or Sorbet, however you choose to say it, by the Breyer Brothers Brewing. It is a fruited Berliner Weisse beer. It is German, as you can tell, but big orange sherbet guy, and it's very slowly. Not this week. My goodness, it's supposed to get cold again and kind of miserable, but it's eventually going to get to the spring warm weather, and that sounds like a great drink. PK, what am I pairing it with?
I can't get my menu to load either, but I
No.
remember what the nachos look like. So I'm gonna pair it with the nachos for you, so you get a little bit of that kick, a little bit of the jalapenos with it, the
Okay.
cheese drizzled
Okay.
over top of it, served hot. So you get a little bit of spice with your cool drink there.
It's perfect. Thank you for
Yes,
the assist. I really appreciate it.
I got you. Tap me in. I get the pin. But yeah, there are 28 other constantly rotating taps out there that you can grab. So check out their menu. Check out their rotating taps. What's on tap and what's on deck, and all their events that they have on their Facebook page. They're all posted there, or you can check them out at their website at tapthattaproom.com. So, Phil, let's dive into the defense once again. We'll wrap up this series. I think the only real negative that I have, and I thought the defense played really well. I thought there were some times where you didn't close the gap. Like I believe it was Highfield on the Matthews 12th goal. He didn't get out there in time. McKay gave up the Bushi behind him for that 11th goal. It felt like every time Buffalo got to that edge where they're either getting within one or tying the game or something like that, Buffalo would give up that goal. So they have to work that out of their system, but I really thought this was a very good defensive game with you got like LaRue out there who hasn't played a ton. You got Highfields who's only been out there, 3 or 4 games now. This was Paul Dawson's first game. Belter's only played in 4. So with the constantly changing back end versus one of the best offenses and best teams in the league versus Toronto, I thought they played really well. The only nitpick that I really want to hit on here is Cam Wires. And I can only go so far with this because he is a rookie. He's coming out of college. He's played in the PLL, but this is his first time, and they've put so much responsibility on his plate. The penalty kill. If or when Justin Martin comes back, it'll be interesting to see if they pull Cam Wires off the penalty kill, because to me, that's the spot that's been hurting him the most, and you can tell that Matt Vince is getting very frustrated with Cam Wires out there. It seems like
Could you
his
ever?
his biggest issue is when he gets caught in between, where if there's a player coming at him and he's like 5 or 6 feet between him and the net, Cam Wires is kind of wondering what to do. Should he try to block the shot? Should he challenge? So it's not the first time that it's happened in this game, but it just seems like that is the biggest issue with his game right now is on the penalty kill. And again, I can only go so far because he is a rookie. He's still learning. He's trial by fire. So I don't think he's a bad defender. I don't think he is one of the main issues on the back end whatsoever. But there are certain parts of his game where if he's able to work that out, he can be one of those staple, reliable guys back there. And they're relying on him a ton. I mean, the end of the Rush game in regulation, you had Belter and Cam Wires on the back end there. So it will be interesting to see what they do with that other main piece in front of Matt Vince when Justin Martin comes back, if they pull Wires off that and go Martin and Paul Dawson, or if they like the 2 big guys back there in Dawson and Wires to try to block shots. Again, it's not every time. There's just small parts of his game that he still has to work out. And again, still rookie, not hammering him this, but those are, again, being a little bit biased or unbiased here. You kind of got to work that out of his game, especially with playoffs right around the corner.
Yeah, and like you mentioned with Dawson now there, and he played that position once perfectly.
100%
Once
gonna
I
be
was
massive.
not thrilled with because he missed a pass that I thought he should have had, but the other one he did pick off perfectly. So he's also still settling in, but with him kind of taking over that role, I do wonder, like you mentioned, if they're going to go more of a Dawson Belter or
Yep.
Dawson and somebody else. Like, does Dawson essentially take over Wires' spot and they put somebody else in that position? It doesn't mean Wires can't play up top either. He's just not really handling being right in front of Vince all that well on the PK. And my goodness, I mean, Vince gets upset sometimes in a game. I know this one very heated. When that goal happened, it was a big moment, but Vince, you could really, really easily tell he was not thrilled with that play. Overall, though, the defense I thought played really well, and something that I think we're seeing a lot of, which we already mentioned with the transition, but Belter is a player I did not think would have too much transition in him, and we've seen a lot of it already with a few breakaways, like you mentioned, the pick play to set Dylan Robinson up, the other 2-on-1. It's a aspect of his game I just really didn't expect to see much of, if any, and he's had a decent amount of it as he has settled into this team. The last 2 games, he's had a few really good opportunities on that transition. I think that's going to be something interesting to watch with him to see if he continues that or if he kind of dials it back a little bit and plays just more stay-at-home defense. And then having McKay back on defense predominantly, I think for the most part he played defense in this game, a few offensive shifts here and there, but loved having him back. He is such a good defender. I know he's important playing that left side, especially without Robinson and McCulley, but I love him so much on defense, so I was happy to see him back there more times than not this game.
Yeah, the only other thing, and I think it's important to note this because we got a couple questions on this before we move on, and they're getting healthy. They're definitely getting. They have to get healthy is the better way to phrase that. You have to get healthy. They're not getting healthy; they're getting worse. But the one good news that we got, and it was a surprise come Saturday, is Adam Bomberry is back on the evaluation list. And I know a bunch of people were wondering what the heck is this evaluation list. Think of it in terms if you watch baseball. If a player gets hurt and they're out a while, what do? You send them down to the minors so that they can build it back up. They get a few innings here, a few innings there, and then they're back up at the majors. Picture that in the NLL without the games. They're just bringing him on so they can evaluate him, get it, evaluation list, without having to make a roster move. So he's able to practice with the team. They're able to get a better eye on him without having to free up a spot on the 21. And based on what I've noticed this year, and I don't know if there's a set amount of time, we'll have to research that and ask a few more questions, but it seems like it's a week to 2 weeks on the evaluation list on average around the league. So I believe it was the face-off man for Vancouver that just got activated this week. He was on the evaluation list, and I believe it was 2 weeks that he was there. So there it seems to be 1 to 2 weeks on that before you're activated, but just him alone getting put on the evaluation list. And you mentioned it on last show that last rumor we heard was possibly late March. That's right on pace with it. So am I expecting him back next week? Maybe not, but am I expecting him back in 2 weeks? I think you're going to get an Adam Bomberry back before the end of the season, and that's massive to add him to the back end with all these injuries. If you get him back, you get Justin Martin back, and you fill it out with the presence of Zach Belter. You get the presence of Paul Dawson back there. Some of these bigger guys, I think this defense can come right into its own, and finally, fingers crossed, knock on wood, nobody else gets hurt, and you can finally have a solid rotation of guys back there rather than interchanging all the time. But let's move forward to the goalies here because we're beating this game to death. I thought Matt Vince played very well. I thought there were times during this game where there were goals that appeared to be on him, and then you look back and, he got screened. But there are some goals that I think he would want back. That one Matthews one, the 10th goal, I think he needs to have that one. But it seemed like, and in typical Matt Vince fashion, when he needs to make the save, he makes the save. He was massive in those closing moments of the game. After Buffalo got that lead, he stonewalled them. There were times, there was the massive 2-on-1 save where Dylan Robinson was the only one back. He makes that save, and it leads to the Cloutier goal. That save that he made behind the net, Phil, I'm up in the press box, and I'm seeing it all happen. He was behind the net. He runs around the net, and I don't know. It might have been Corey Small that was trying to dunk it. He saves it with his stick, Craig, right at the goal line. And the crowd was silent. Sweeney was silent. I'm like, I can't cheer up here. It's one of the disadvantages of being in the press box is you have to be unbiased. You have to be composed. You can't show emotion or anything like that. You can't be cheering. But I'm just looking around and the whole crowd is silent. I'm like, this might be one of the saves of the year, and nobody made a peep. I'm like, what is going on here? That save was unbelievable. And then I'm scrolling on Twitter, and everybody's blowing up on Twitter. I'm like, how does everybody see that on Twitter and online? And the arena that's filled with 18-5 doesn't make a noise for that save. It was unbelievable. And that save does not get the credit that it deserves in that moment or now.
Yeah, there was another save he had really late in the fourth quarter. I think it might have been Small or somebody from the left side cut to the middle. It was wide open, a terrible play by the defense, and he just stuck his pad out, grabbed it, and made a really difficult save look really easy. And again, it was late in the fourth. It was a monster
It was
save,
right before
and
the last TV timeout.
yes, and I was pretty much yelling at the defense because they left a guy just completely wide open because the shot clock was coming down to an end, and they just kind of gave up on the play while Toronto kept going, and it was a monster save by Vince. But yeah, that goal, or that save, I put in my phone to go back and watch the replay later when I got home. I was like, did he make a save? Was it a miss? It was very hard to see live from where we were, especially with the net falling over, like right after the play. It literally just kind of fell over on him, and I think it was just really hard to see what happened. I didn't know if Craig missed the net completely, hit the post, if it got blocked by a defender. It was really hard to see live if Vince made the save or what was happening on that play. And I think, like you mentioned, I think the announcer, Sweeney, and everybody else was confused. And then if you go back and watch the replay, they actually had a slowed down actual replay of it before a TV timeout, and you go and see perfectly what an incredible save it was. The announcers did a great job on the broadcast saying how great it was, and I think the NLL even posted on their Instagram.
They did, yep.
They had a video of how great it was, but in the arena, like you mentioned, it did not get the applause it deserved because it was pretty confusing to find out what happened on that play. I thought Vince played really well. I thought Rose played really well. It was very strange to start how both teams, again, 6-5 after the first was really mind-blowing from two of the best goalies in the entire league. I know Vince has been not quite his self this year. I think he's still top 5 in the entire league. Rose was supposed to be number 1, is number 1, and he let, again, 6 of 9 in. So that first quarter was really, really strange to see both goalies struggling quite a bit, but I think both goalies really settled in. But more than anything, I mean, the Rock scored, 3 in the entire second half, and that is kind of what we saw a lot of last year, where Vince and the team would struggle in the first half a little bit, but the second half, he would make his adjustments at halftime and come out and allow 1, 2, 3 goals the entire second half to allow the offense the time to get back in the game and win a close game. And that's exactly what happened in this one. Yes, it was a rough 9-goal first half, but then you only allowed 3 in the entire second half, which is vintage Matt Vince of what he was doing, especially last year when they met on their huge championship run. 2 other things, like you said, we are beating this one to death, so I'm going to try to sprint through these. The power play, 1 for 6, not good, but at the same time, a lot of them got abbreviated, and I don't think that shows. I really hate that it doesn't count and still counts as a full power play, so try to sprint through this. The first penalty lasted only 40 seconds before it went to 4-on-4. The second penalty was broke up by halftime. It was partially in the first half, partially in the second half. The third penalty, which was the 5-on-3, they did get a full 2 minutes and 40 seconds of 5-on-3 time. And then the second penalty of that 5-on-3 was cut a minute short by another penalty. And then they had the 5-minute major where they scored one of the 2. So 1 for 6 looks awful. When you really look at it, it still counts when you only had 40 seconds on the power play and other situations like that, which I think is, I get it, I guess. I mean, it's not a full power play, so it's weird to count it, but I mean, you have to count it as something. But I don't think the power play really was as bad as it looks, and they had a lot of good looks. I think Rose was just doing really well, but the penalty kill, 4 for 8, that's not good. That needed to be fixed a little bit, but like you mentioned, you said Toronto was really good on the power play, and they showed it. And then face-offs, we don't care much about. But for his credit, he started really bad. It ended up being, 22-9? But the last 14 face-offs of the game, he was 6-8. So pretty much 50-50 after he kind of made his adjustments, especially heading into the fourth quarter, where there was a lot of faceoffs because of all the scoring. He ended up having a really good end to the game when it was really important to get a lot of those faceoffs, and he ended up winning them outright a few times over Erlin. So I think it was a really good adjustment by Farrell and what he was able to do in the second half, especially that fourth quarter. He really came out on top in a lot of those faceoffs. So good to see he was able to make the adjustments against one of the best in the league.
Yeah, I don't have a ton more to add to this game. Like you mentioned with the Farrell, he was getting burned very, very easily in the first half. Like, it was clean clamps and Erlin was out. And I'm like, okay, this is part of the reason that we held our expectations in check after the Saskatchewan game, because he wasn't really going against a faceoff, man. You can destroy the good players in the league, but how do you hold up against the top 3, the top 5 guys in the league? And TD Erlin is in my estimation, the top 3 guy in this league. He's unbelievable at that. We got a little bit more knowledge of Farrell. He had 102-degree fever that morning, so they were even questioning if he was even going to be able to play in this one. So the adjustment that he made, and I think that's a big talking point of the faceoffs, is he was able to make that adjustment. He was seeing what Erlin was doing in the first half and was able to adjust that. And you mentioned it, 6 to 8 in the second half and the faceoffs. And we have never said on the show, and I'm going to repeat it, we have never said that faceoffs completely don't matter. There's times in each game when you need to have that ability in your back pocket to win those faceoffs. He did exactly that. And if you're going to have a faceoff man, just like Farrell, who early in the game might not be winning it, but we don't really care about those times. I think there were 2 times this entire game where a faceoff win resulted in a goal. It doesn't really matter in the early games. It matters in crunch time if you can win those faceoffs and get the ball to your offense and not allow the opponents to get that ball. He wins them at that point in this game. He was beating Erlin when it mattered, and that's when you know if you can earn a spot on this team just by being a Fogo, and I thought he did it. So I have no problems with him being on the lineup after this game. He's 2 for 2 in my book on good games for him. Yes, 9 of 31 is not a great indication, but it's when you win the faceoffs, in my opinion. You already talked about the penalties. The 2 bench minors can't happen. Those are 2 inexcusable penalties there. There's going to be moments in the games where you take dumb penalties or whatever. It's the heat of the moment. Bench minors can't happen, especially in a back and forth game like this where you're trying to come back. They just killed off a power play or a penalty kill. And no, I'm sorry. They scored on the power play. And guess what? You got another penalty kill you got to kill off now because of the bench minor. It's just those type of things can't happen. Those parts of the game have to be cleaned up. There was a Dawson miss clear. That can't happen. You just got to, there's bits and pieces that need to be cleared up. And I guess the only other question mark I have, and I kind of already talked about this before, Clark over Solver makes no sense. Solver needs to be in the rotation on the back end there. I know you need another lefty, but maybe you shouldn't have traded Brad McCulley.
Or if anything, I mean, I hate it personally, but I mean, that's a situation where you throw McKay back up top and you have Solver on the defense.
Or a Highfield, or a Dylan Robinson. Give them a few ships up there. But I think that Dalton Solver is one of those underrated, underappreciated back-end guys that should not be pulled out of the lineup. He was pulled out of the Albany game. You saw what happened there. He's pulled out of this one. Yes, they ended up winning, but I think a Solver on the back end is more valuable than a Clark on the front end.
I know I was very critical of the limited amount of playtime Highfield had in his career, but I think he's done a really nice job for the Bandits so far since coming in. He's been a little bit of energy as far as offense and defense and transition, which is what he is, but I think he's done a really nice job playing pretty strong defense, getting the ball to the offense really quickly, and even having a few offensive shifts where he's played well. He hasn't done anything to stand out to be bad, in my opinion. He's had, sure, a few plays here and there, pretty much every single player does, but he hasn't been just outright bad in any way. I think he is a good, valuable addition to this team, and I think he's had a pretty good start for them, so that's good to see. I don't know, we don't have to go over it too much, but that bench minor where it was the legal substitution, I don't know. It was hard to see on the replay. Kyle Buchanan, I believe, was the one who was called for it. He is not a guy, to me, that is ever going to leave the box early ahead of time. Johnny was yelling at it and didn't understand why they called it. Buchanan was very confused. All the Bandits were very confused. And to me, I really, really hate in general when they call illegal substitutions and it's so far away from the play that it just didn't matter. Like, Buchanan would have been the 5th forward on when Toronto's defense was completely on the field. The other Bandits' 4 forwards were on the field, and it was very slowly transitioning into offense and defense. Like, there wasn't a high transition play that you're trying to stop or a high transition play you're going into. It just seemed like not a great call at that point. But the other one where I assume it was Tavares just kind of yelling at the refs, I completely agree. That cannot happen.
So the Bandits have 5 games remaining, 4 of them on the road. 3 straight on the road here until they're back in Bandit Land for Fan Appreciation Night. I believe it's on the 14th versus Calgary. So long road trip here. No more Bandit Land and no more press box for me this year. Phil, you close it out. But let's dive into the milestones here real quick. There were 4 possibilities, and we got 3 of the 4. Steve Priolo did cross the 1,300 loose balls for his career. Matt Vince is now the all-time games or minutes played goaltender and player in Buffalo Bandits history, and Dane Smith has the top 3 records, and he already did going into this one, but he also broke himself for 3rd place in assists in a single season. Single Bandit season. I don't have to really talk about that for a couple more weeks now until he gets close to the 90s. But 3 great milestones, and they
throw out the other one that I heard on the broadcast.
Yeah, you can mention that in 1 second. But the 2 announcements that they made in the arena, again, I keep prefacing this. They do a great job this season of giving these players the recognition that they deserve in the game so the crowd can get into it. They put Steve Perillo's up there and they put Matt Vince's up there. So again, I don't know why they changed this. I don't know what came about it, but I'm very happy that they're actually giving these players the recognition that they deserve. So kudos to them. The job they're doing in game to recognize these players and their accomplishments, absolutely love it.
Yeah, when they mentioned both of them, I immediately thought of you. I was like, wow, PK is probably just living his dream right now up there.
I am. This was not my goal to get them to recognize it, but this was my goal to put that recognition out there. So one way or another, it got to the Bandits leadership, and they're putting it on the board, and I absolutely love it. Whether it was me, somebody else, don't care. But absolutely love that these players are getting the recognition that they deserve for these unbelievable accomplishments.
Yeah, and the other one that I heard on the broadcast, which is just, again, pretty mind-blowing. I mean, even for Stainhouse, but going into the game, Dane Smith was number 2 all-time in franchise history for points against Toronto, specifically with 186, which is just a ridiculous number. Stainhouse had 188 before this game. Obviously, he's done, so that's all he will ever get. But he led the entire franchise with 188 against Toronto. Smith ended up with 190 after this game against Toronto alone. It's just insane to think that Smith has simply 190 points against one franchise, against one team in a Buffalo Bandits uniform. He has 190 points against just Toronto. That is just a ridiculous stat to even think about. And honestly, especially with the unified standings and not playing Toronto 3 times a year, possibly 2 other in playoffs, I don't know if that number will ever be touched again.
Very true. Very, very true. But Phil, that ends this part of it episode. Before we let's dive into our second sponsor here, Mr. Sizzles. We were in attendance there on Saturday, and Phil, let's give the read of Mr. Sizzles before we dive into what the rest of the league did and finish up with the Sabres.
Yep, our second ever sponsor, Mr. Sizzles, is currently at 346 Connecticut Street in Buffalo, New York, where we went and enjoyed it. They are open 7 days a week, 11 to 11, with a brunch menu on Saturday and Sunday from 11 to 3.
Yeah, like Phil said, we were in attendance. We told everybody we were going to be there right around 5. I'm not saying it was because of us they were this busy, but I've never seen it that busy. So I'm going to just pat ourselves on the back for why they were that busy. But yeah, when you have to park like 2 or 3 streets away to walk there, it's like, man, this place is absolutely popping. We walked in, the line was out the door. You know, we got our food, the line was out the door. It's a great environment for everybody, and the food just was delicious. I got a orange creamsicle milkshake and the sizzle burgers and some side of fries. But again, Phil, I was telling you, the sizzle sauce, unbelievable at Mr. Sizzles.
Yeah, I had the St. Patrick's Day themed shake, which was incredible. You did not downplay the shakes at all.
Told you.
Yeah, it was really, really good, and they come in a fun little environmentally friendly tin cup that you can take home and reuse as many times as you want, which is a nice little feature compared to your simple paper cup. I think the tin cup was a really nice touch. I also had the Great Dane sandwich, which I believe is why he played in this game so well, so I'm also going to just take credit for that. It was really good. It was really, really good, and you could definitely just taste the creation that it was. Again, not a huge avocado person, but it was nicely blended in there. It was a really good sandwich, and I also did try your sizzle sauce, which was really good with the fries I had. Overall, really great experience, and like you mentioned, I think it was busy probably because of us, but the staff did a really nice job handling how busy it was as well, and just overall it was a lot of fun, and we will be back.
Yeah, like you said, the staff handled it wonderfully. You can kind of, it depends on where you're going. That if it's really, really busy, some of the staff can get a little bit snippy or stuff like that. Mr. Sizzles has an unbelievable staff. Couldn't give them enough credit for what they were able to do. Because like I said, the line that when we were there, it was to the door the entire time. Like there was no gaps there was no rest for the kitchen, for the staff, anybody. And I thought everybody there was just unbelievable. So if you're like us and we'll be back, check out their menu on their socials and at MrSizzles.com. Can't brag about them enough. Absolutely love them and love that they're a sponsor on the show, and hopefully we help them as much as they're helping us. But let's dive into the NLL outlook real quick. I know we're, nearing the hour mark, which we like to keep it at, but we've been diving into these Bandits games a lot more often now. But
a lot of fun.
There's been a lot to talk about. But Panther City was in Halifax. Halifax won this one 13-9. It was 12-2 at half. Halifax. Just an unbelievable game, and it shows off what type of offense Halifax has. We'll move on to San Diego versus Calgary. San Diego won this one 7-6, Phil. 7-6. They scored one second half goal, and it was 6-2 at halftime. San Diego. Calgary falls further down, and San Diego moves further up. Final game of Friday. Las Vegas in Vancouver. I was the only one of the BSC boys to pick Vancouver. They walk out of this one 13-12. Charlene Beatties got the game winner with 27 seconds to go. But flash forward to Saturday's game. Rochester was in Albany. Big upset for Rochester. Third straight win after losing 6 straight. Vancouver 5-2 after one, 8-4 at halftime. They take this one 11-10. Philly, Georgia, big victory for Philly to keep their playoff hopes alive. 13-8. They knocked Georgia down a little bit more. And then the final game, New York was in Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan won this one 17-15, despite New York's 7 goals in the fourth quarter. Not enough for New York to take back the victory. Saskatchewan 17-15.
Yeah, this is just another kind of we don't know what these teams are unified standings weekend where, again, Saskatchewan and New York had a really good early season run, but not early where they struggled a little bit, but then they picked it up. Now they are starting to fall. Rochester, like you mentioned, who are they? I don't know. They lost 6 straight. Now they've won 3 straight against, Albany's one of the better teams in the league. You went over and beat them. It's a massive win for them. And just, again, weird San Diego, Calgary. Calgary just does not seem to have it this year. I mean, even still holding San Diego to just 7 is really impressive.
It's their offense, man.
Which you mentioned in the preseason, just does not have enough to keep up. And then Panther City and Halifax just kind of showing that they're a really good team still. But just a wild weekend, and again, just don't really know. Even Georgia and Philly, like Georgia, that's a game they want to win just as bad as Philly. Philly goes out there and kind of stomps them. So it's just very strange to see what all of these teams are, and I really don't think we have a great idea of, outside of maybe the top 4, who the rest of the league really is.
Yeah, I mean, just real quick on Calgary, but I'll leave my talking points to my article on Thursday. I don't really want to spoil it, but Calgary, they've allowed 140 goals. They've scored 149. They're 5-8. They got a plus goal differential of 9, and it's not Del Bianco's fault that your offense can't score. A lot of their goals are coming from transition as well. This is what I was saying in the offseason, so I'm patting myself in the back. I've been saying all through season long. Their offense has spurts of really good play, and then they go to sleep. 6 goals in the entire game. 2 in the first half is not enough when your goalie saved. He had over 50 saves, Phil. It was unbelievable, the performance that he put on. Where's the number here? I know I have it somewhere here. Calgary, where
he also
are
has,
you?
While you're looking, Del Bianco has 15 assists in 13 games.
Yeah, it's redonkulous what he's done.
Really
Casey Jackson in that one. 8 goals.
Yeah,
credit to him. I don't know why I can't find their game, Phil. San Diego. Oh, that was this Friday game. That's why. 54 of 61 saves. That should be enough to win. Yeah. The only other 2 notes I have: Cook and King went 2-0-2, and Pace went 1-2-3. Their offense isn't good enough. It's just as simple as that. Their offense is not good enough to make a run, and they still might make the playoffs. But I would love to face Calgary in the first game, because if you put up 10, you win. It's as simple as that. But yeah, let's move on to the Buffalo Sabres here. It was a train again, Phil. It was a train, and I'm glad I didn't get my hopes up. But Thursday versus the Islanders, we were talking about that as we were recording, but they finished that one off 4-0 victory. Benson, 2 goals. Cousins, Olafson had the other two. UPL, 21 of 21 saves. Shots were 37 to 21 in favor of the Sabres. And then Saturday, one of the most important games of the year, they lost 4-1 versus the Red Wings. They could have gotten within 1 point of a playoff spot. But Tage was the only goal scorer. UPL, 22 of 25 saves. Shots were 26 apiece. Yeah, the train hit me again, Phil. I guess it just got my head because I was peeking down the tracks, just looking
That's
to see
fair.
if it was a train, and yeah, I got decapitated because I thought it was. I thought it might just been the light at the end of the tunnel, but it was a train.
Yeah, I was also trying to keep my hopes down. Like we mentioned, we weren't really bought in to see if the Sabres would be able to pull it off. But at the same time, we are fans of the team, so it was hard not to get your hopes up just a little bit that they might continue their incredible role, especially the way they were playing, even beating the Islanders, who are a good team fighting for playoffs, beating them 4-0. You're like, okay, they are back. This is the team that they should have been all season. Let's see them just roll this through the rest of the season and come into playoffs hot if they make it. And then you just kind of fall flat against the Red Wings in a must-win game. And this is what happens when you get yourself into such a massive hole early on in the season. They played really, really well for a few games there, and it was great. And then you have one game where you don't play well, and it pretty much all but ends your season. I mean, we've said this before. We wrote them off, and they came back from the dead a little bit, so I'm not going to completely write them off, but this was a must-win game for the most part, and you fell flat, and you just don't have the space to make any mistakes like that. And the Islanders game was great, huge victory, and then the Red Wings game was depressing, and they just did not play well enough and did not play like a team that wanted to make playoffs, or just played like the more desperate team. The Red Wings played like that team, and they earned the victory.
Yeah, like we said on the last show, if they win both these games and they're right in the race, I'll buy back in. They were 1-4 on the power play versus the Islanders. UPL was playing like a Vezina Trophy contender. I mean, his fifth shutout of the season. Benson looked like he took another step, and they were on a 99-point pace from January 1st on. I'm like, okay, this team can actually do some damage. Detroit game, first period, up 1-0. They're buzzing around the ice. I'm like, Phil, they're going to do it again. They're going to get right back in this playoff for crappy second and third period. Just absolutely disappointing. They got way too complacent. They said it themselves. They got way too complacent. Detroit just clearly wanted it more. Byron and Dahleen did not have it that game. That pairing, I do not like that pairing. They only had 4 high-danger chances the entire time and 0 in the third period. It was a game that was a big letdown after the first period. I'm like, okay, first period looks good. I'm doing stuff around the house. I'm coming back. Second period started. I'm like, oh, come on. Like, you lost the lead. They're down 2-1 going into the third period. I'm like, okay, I'll take a shower before the third period. I come back, saw the goal. I'm like, okay, they lost. It's 3-1. Then the empty netter. It was a very disappointing game where you could have gotten back in it. But looking at the standings now, 14 games remaining. You had jumped a bunch of teams, and now the teams just jumped right back. Detroit's in that final spot, 68 games played, 74 points. You got Washington right behind him, 66 games played, 73 points. So they're the most dangerous team at the moment because they got 2 games in hand. Islanders, 67 games played, 73 points. Pittsburgh's ahead of Buffalo now, 67 games played, 69 points. And then Buffalo's right there, 68 games played, 69 points. So they're 5 games out. They have the same amount of games Detroit plays. They play Detroit one more time. And that's why it was so important to get this one, because you could have gotten within one. Go on your West Coast trip. They got 5 away games here. You need to grab 4 of those 5 just to keep pace, and then hopefully you make a bit of a run in those last, 9 games. So they're not dead in the water, but that game, there's a lot of dirt or over top of your casket where if you want to get out, you're going to have to ask a bunch of people to start shoveling you out.
And I don't understand how you get complacent. How?
It doesn't make any sense.
How
I don't get it.
Like, even for them to admit, like, oh yeah, we got complacent. How do you get complacent in a game you are desperate to win? I do not understand that mentality whatsoever. Like, how are you not, like you mentioned, buzzing around the ice and just trying to go out there and just leave everything you have on the ice? I don't understand how you get complacent against a team that you are directly in competition for a playoff
that had
spot.
Lost 7 straight.
Right. I do not understand, A, how you get complacent, and then B, to admit that you got complacent. I mean, congratulations on admitting your fault, but how? I don't get it. It's so incredibly frustrating. And again, they put themselves in this situation by being bad for most of the season. And, this is what happens when you have a bad, complacent game. It hurts you this much more, especially against the team you are directly in competition for a playoff spot. But the mentality of it, I do not understand how you get complacent in a game like this and just let the other team want it more than you when you haven't made playoffs in 12 years. I don't get how you're not the most desperate team in the entire league every single game.
Way to go, Sabres. You could have made this segment very interesting, and now it's a 5-minute segment. So
and Devin
congrats
Levi
to you.
is back up, so that's fun.
He is. So we'll see how much he plays in this West Coast. They better send him back down after this West Coast trip. He should not be up here if he's just playing his
just
backup.
not go west? What is that about?
It's they think Devin Levi's a better player, but he's not
not
as good as UPL at the moment. But yeah, it's frustrating in being a Sabres fan again. Like I said, thought they were going to be back in it, the most important game, and they come up limp the final 2 periods. But Phil, is there anything else you want to add to this episode before we shut it down for a work week until we get ready for Buffalo v. Panther City for the first time in the history of the Buffalo Bandits organization?
Yeah, congrats to the Bandits on a absolutely massive win, not only for their season, but a huge statement. Hopefully they can run the table the rest of the league, finish with a ridiculously strong record and schedule and everything, and hopefully this is just the turning point that they need for their entire season. But congrats on the huge win, and Toronto, I don't know why they can't beat the Bandits, but I love it.
So on our next show, we'll run through any other Buffalo Bills news. There was nothing this weekend of note to bring up. We'll go over any more Sabres games, and then we'll preview Buffalo versus Panther City. Like I said, Panther City versus Buffalo has never happened before, so it'll be a very interesting breakdown. Some at least one familiar face for Panther City, but there's a couple big names and one that you've heard Phil mention a couple times in his bold predictions. But we'll talk about that on our Friday show. So thank you all for listening to another episode of the Buffalo Sports Collective. Thank you to Tap That Tap Room and Mr. Sizzles for sponsoring this show and this episode. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X and Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. Visit our website at buffalosportscollective.com. Phil's article will drop on Tuesday. Mine will drop on Thursday. Subscribe to our channel wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure you leave us a review on Apple and Spotify. Until next time, bye-bye.